pagi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Halo, selamat pagi teman-teman Kapsipi seluruh Indonesia, teman-teman ilmu pemerintahan seluruh Indonesia, Ketua Prodi, dosen ilmu pemerintahan dan teman-teman yang berkaitan dengan kegiatan pemerintahan. Saya nggak kelihatan ini. Kamera Pak. Saya mau lihat itunya, orangnya. Mau lihat itunya, mau lihat orangnya. Nggak susah ya, sini nggak bisa. Nggak bisa ya? Ada nggak? Nama orangnya ada nggak? Ya. Kelihatan juga ya. Oh iya, sini ya. Oh iya. Sini. Kelihatan sini. Situ. Hah? Sini.
Cik. Oke, selamat pagi semuanya. Saya di sini akan menyapa kepada Ibu Bunga. Assalamualaikum Ibu Bunga. Di sini ada Bapak Servatus. Selamat pagi Pak. Terima kasih. Ada Bu Dokter Titin. Selamat pagi Ibu. Di sini juga ada beberapa teman dari keluarga besar Kapsipi ya. Dan di sini juga menyampaikan info buat peserta di sini Bapak Ibu ada dari mahasiswa jurusan ilmu pemerintahan juga. Jadi di sini juga bisa dilihat di Zoom yang sudah berpartisipasi, saya ucapkan terima kasih banyak. Nanti kita akan start mulainya itu jam 8.30, jadi kurang lebih 5 menit lagi. Jadi teman-teman tolong disiapkan aja ya, takutnya jaringan dan sebagainya, cek earphone-nya dan lain-lain. Dan di sini pun ada Bapak Yamardi, Kaprodi jurusan ilmu pemerintahan FISIP Unjani ya. Saya panggil dulu ya beliaunya ya. Pak Yamardi, di mana ya? Nah ini teman-teman. Ini dia. Pak Yamardi ini ya. Selamat pagi Pak, silahkan say hello Bapak kepada para peserta dan keluarga besar ilmu pemerintahan.
Halo, selamat pagi keluarga besar ilmu pemerintahan se-Indonesia. Selamat ulang tahun Kapsipi ke-6 ya. Dan kita berbahagia hari ini kita bisa terlibat secara aktif. Kita melaksanakan sebuah seminar internasional yang melibatkan Kapsipi dan anggotanya, baik yang struktur maupun yang di dosen. Ya. Semoga Kapsipi makin jaya, kita semua masih aktif. Mudah-mudahan Bapak Ibu semua dalam keadaan sehat walafiat. Terima kasih, selamat menikmati seminar internasional yang diadakan oleh Kapsipi bekerjasama dengan FISIP Unjani. Teman-teman dari Kapsipi seluruh Indonesia kalau datang ke Bandung main ke Cimahi, kita akan terima dengan sangat senang sekali ya, berbagi pengalaman, berbagi prestasi ya. Mudah-mudahan kita bisa berkolaborasi di kemudian hari. Terima kasih, selamat bergabung. Kita akan mengadakan pembukaan acara ini dengan sebentar lagi ya. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
The event will be begin very soon. Please mute on your camera and mute the phone. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jara Novianti, and I will be your Master of Ceremony for today's event. The Honorable Rector of General Ahmad Yani University, Professor Hikmahanto Juwana, the Honorable Vice Rector of General Ahmad Yani University, Dr. Asep Kurniawan, the Dean of Social and Politics Faculty, Chairman of Indonesia Government Study Association, Prof. Dr. Utang Suwaryo MA. To all the head of Government Studies Department in Indonesia, to the moderator, Dr. Diah Mutiarin, all the speaker, Dr. Ricardo Pelizo from Nazarbayev University for Kazakhstan, Dr. Abel Polis from Tallinn University of Technology, Estonia, Dr. Srirat Gawang from Kazakhstan University from Thailand, and last, Dr. Halimah Abdul Manaf from University Utara of Malaysia. And to all the participants, welcome to General Ahmad Yani University International Seminar. Welcome to the international seminar entitled COVID-19 Pandemic Outbreak and Governance Discrepancy Experience from Kazakhstan, Estonia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. This event is held in collaboration between Government Science Department of General Ahmad Yani University and Indonesia Government Study Associations. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please stand up to sing Indonesia National Anthem Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Now, before we move to the next agenda, let us pray together according to our belief and religion. Pray, start. Finish. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now Hear the greeting from Indonesia Government Study Association Chairman to Professor Utang Suwaryo. The time is yours.
The Honorable Rector of Unjani University, Professor Hikmahanto Juwana SH LLM, PhD. The Honorable Dean of Faculty of Social and Political Science, Unjani University, Dr. Agus Subagio. The Honorable Presenters, Dr. Riccardo Felizzo, Associate Professor, Vice Dean, Graduate School of Public Policy, Nazarbayev University, Kazakhstan. Dr. Abel Polese, Senior Research Fellow, School of Law and Government, Dublin City University, Island Tallinn University of Technology, Estonia. Dr. Siraj Goh Wong, Assistant Professor, Department Political Science and Public Administration, Kazakhstan University, Thailand. Dr. Halimah binti Abdul Manap, Associate Professor, Deputy Dean of School of Government, University Utara Malaysia, Malaysia. The Honorable Moderator, Dr. Diah Mutiarin, Associate Professor, Department of Government, Muhammadiyah University, Yogyakarta. The Honorable, the Management and members of Kapsipi. Also, the Honorable participant, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, let us praise to Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Because of His blessing, we are able to attend this international webinar on COVID-19 pandemic outbreak and governance discrepancies experience from Kazakhstan, Estonia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. In this occasion, I am as the head of Indonesia Governmental Science Association or Kapsipi inform congratulations for international webinar. This international webinar is collaboration between the Kapsipi and Government Science Unjani University. Personally, I hope that our webinar would be a good start for our cooperation between lecturers of government science in Indonesia, especially in subject developing curriculum and research. Respected brother and sister, Kapsipi was founded 24 November 2014 in Bandung. Until now, it has been 6 years. So now it is 6th birthday. Happy 6th birthday to the Kapsipi. I hope it will continue to exist and be successful. Please applause for Kapsipi. Just today, in addition to international webinar, there are also Kapsipi's 6th anniversary event. Kapsipi as a professional organization that is an organization for study programs of governmental science throughout Indonesia, had some functions. One, maintain the existence of governmental science as a science. Two, develop a curriculum for government science. Three, develop study programs for governmental science throughout Indonesia. And then our hope for the future Kapsipi are the first, commitment and cohesiveness among members must be more solid. The second, more active, creative, and productive in producing product and scientific activities in the field of government science. The third, able to collaborate with relevant institutions, both government and non-government. The fourth, human resources of Kapsipi members must be continuously improved so that in the next 3 years, the field of Kapsipi human resources has changed for the better. This is due to the increasingly widespread in complex challenge of government problematic. So that government scholars and government scientists need to respond scientifically. So the Kapsipi must be able to create a concept of government in accordance to the demand of the area and the ethical needs of the field. Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah, until now, there are no less than 120 government science study programs in Indonesia, spread from Sabang to Merauke. The back and faith of the governmental science study program depends on us as governmental scientists. To what extent do they want to develop the science of government? The extent to which they are willing to carry out government research so as to produce new concept or theory of government. The last one again, congratulations. I hope be successful. As much as this, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for the welcome greeting, Professor Utang. The next welcome greeting we will hear from General Ahmadiyani University Rector, Professor Hikmahanto Juwana. Time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good morning to you all, and welcome to Universitas Jenderal Ahmad Yani. Unfortunately, some of you are unable to come to our campus due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Nonetheless, I think the seminar that we are going to hold, an international seminar, will not decrease its substance, because the substance is very important for all of us around the world. Secondly, I would like to welcome our distinguished speakers from various countries and to share their knowledge, their experience within their own government on handling the pandemic the COVID-19 pandemic. Thirdly, let me congratulate Kapsipi for their 6th anniversary as of today, as Professor Utang Sunario mentioned. I think this is very important for an association like Kapsipi to hold meetings, do scholar works, and hopefully, probably, publish a journal. I don't know whether there's going to be a journal that is being published or not, but I think this is very important. Lastly, before I end my speech, I'm not going to have a long speech here because next I'm going to be a speaker. So let me limit myself in saying those things. But before we go any further, for those of you who have not come to our campus or know our campus, let me introduce Universitas Jenderal Ahmad Yani. This university is owned by the Indonesian Army through its foundation, which is called the Yayasan Kartika Eka Paksi. And our university has been founded 30 years ago, and the current Chief of Army would want the university to take off, the university to be the same as in the US Naval Postgraduate, a university owned by the Navy in the US. And it is not only for the Navy officers who wants to pursue their postgraduate, but also those civilians around the world who wants to pursue their postgraduate. So Universitas Jenderal Ahmad Yani are embarking to a new level as from I become a rector. So let me have the video of Universitas Jenderal Ahmad Yani so that many of you, even though you are not at the campus, see what the university looks like and what it is going to be in 4-year times.
Saya ingin Prof. Unjani di Indonesia harus menjadi Naval Postgraduate School.
Unjani sudah saatnya untuk take off, sudah saatnya untuk maju. Kita harus bisa mengejar ketertinggalan kita. Makanya ICT ini kita bangun, kita paksakan. Tapi pada saat yang bersamaan memang kita pun harus memperbaiki fisik Unjani, fisik.
So the university is not located in a big city like our neighboring city, Bandung, or like Jakarta. It is located in Cimahi. It is full of army training ground here, and that's why we are established at around Cimahi. Secondly, even though this is owned by the Indonesian Army, nevertheless, we have students not only coming from the military. We have students, civilian students. We take undergraduate students from various schools, high schools in Indonesia. And since April this year, since my appointment as the rector of this university, I would like to make the university known not only in West Java, but also in Indonesia and of course the world. And that's why an international seminar like this is very important to Universitas Jenderal Ahmad Yani. And I encourage my colleagues at the Department of Government Science and other departments to hold an international seminar such as this. So with that, I would like to end my welcoming speech to you all. And I would like to thank Professor Utang for his able hands in making this happen at Universitas Jenderal Ahmad Yani, and also his treasurer, Ibu Dewi Kurniasih. Thank you very much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for the welcome greeting, really warm welcome greeting for our rector. Now, before we move to the next agenda, we're gonna see the CV first. Mr. Jumagar, can you help me to show the CV of Professor? Yeah, this is the curriculum vitae from our beloved rector. But actually, let me tell you guys that he is a really famous academician in Indonesia. So we're really lucky to have him on here. Please give him an applause. So luckily in this event, he will be our keynote speaker that will be delivered by him. But before that, let me read the summary. He was took the bachelor in Indonesia University and then master in Japan, and the last take the PhD at, can you scroll it? Yeah, in Nottingham. And to summary the time, please, Professor Hikmahanto Juwana, please give us the keynote speech. The time is yours.
So I'm back. Thank you very much. Well, thank you. It is an honor for me to become the keynote speaker for this event. My background is in law. Nonetheless, I've been involved in the Indonesian task force for handling the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm currently still the advisor of the task force on legal matters. So with that capacity, I would like to share with you how the Indonesian government handled the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, and of course the issue of governance. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? First, I try to look on various journals that deals with government handling the COVID-19 pandemic. I saw one of the journal an article written by Ricardo Palizzo of Nazarbayev University. In his article, Governance Indicators Explain Discrepancies in COVID-19 Data, which he stated that countries with better governance are more successful in treating the disease and reducing its deadliness. When I look at that and I look at the Indonesian experience, I somewhat disagree with his conclusion. And there are several reasons why it is so. Next slide, please. First of all, governance is sufficient in handling the COVID-19 pandemic? Well, there are many instances where countries which are categorized as having good governance are grappling in handling the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's just say, countries like, of course, the United States. I mean, a lot of people will refer to the US as having a good governance, or Italy, even United Kingdom and France. Yeah. But if you look at the data, these are the countries where they make a huge record on those who are infected and those who are hospitalized, and also those who have died because of the pandemic. The question is why? Why can governance work in this situation? Well, first of all, no government at the initial stage predicted the scale and the consequence of the pandemic. No government. No government. And secondly, no government has prepared itself of the current crisis. In 1998, yes, we do have an economic crisis, but that economic crisis only in a certain area of the world. It does not affect the whole world. But now we have a situation, a crisis that has implicated the world. The widespread of the pandemic has not been imagined by governments. The dilemma, whether to pursue on public health or the economy. Lastly, the scarcity of goods needed to cope with the consequences of the pandemic. Even having a mask, something that is very scarce initially, and the government are grappling with that. Not to mention also ventilators, and also the apparels that is used by the doctors, the nurses. So that it has become a big issue, But of course, now the government can handle on the issue of vaccines because they have experience when handling the COVID outbreak at the initial stage. All right, then, can we go to the next slide? What about the Indonesian experience? I've divided into 3 stages of how Indonesian government is handling the pandemic COVID-19. First, at the early stage of the outbreak. At that time, the government thinks that it can handle the pandemic. The priorities of the government is to make people calm. At that point, the Ministry of Health, Dr. Terawan, he stated in various media, various occasions, that the people need not to worry about the pandemic. And then I still remember there was a panic because a person at a certain building got a flu, and he is from China. So the whole building was in panic. And then he came and then he said that we don't need to worry. We're going to make sure that he is going to be treated and hospitalized. And also he said that, do not panic in buying masks, because mask is only for those who are infected by the disease. Masks are only for the doctors and nurses. But now, everyone wears a mask. Even the government have regulation to make sure that the people wears masks. If not, then there's going to be penalties. So the priorities of the government is to make people calm and making sure that it has small impact to our economy. A province in Indonesia, Bali, which is very famous for tourists, at that time still opens. And then we want to make sure that the government can contain those who are infected in Bali, so that it will not impact it on the economy in that province, and of course the government as a whole. And also there is a denial of how many were infected and hospitalized. Of course, this is not good in terms of transparency and to a good governance. But this is the dilemma that the government has to face, because they want to make sure that the pandemic will not have an impact to our economy. Now, the next stage is after the WHO made announcement that it is a pandemic, and the government all over the world has to make sure that the widespread of this COVID-19 pandemic is being terminated or stopped. This is where the government started to get very serious, and they established a task force, making sure that enough facilities for those who are infected to be treated. Hospital are erected in a very short time, and then doctors are recruited so that they will treat the COVID-19 patients. And most are coming from our military, the military doctors. They are the one who is very easy to be mobilized all over Indonesia. And this is where the Indonesian Chief of Army are involved in the issue of COVID-19. And then the government tries its best to preserve the economy, even though it is very difficult after the announcement of the WHO. And nonetheless, the government has not yet prioritized to make people aware of the unprecedented scale of the pandemic. Next slide. So now it's the lockdown stage, when the government, like any other government in the world, announced that Indonesia will enter into a lockdown. At that moment, the government has downgraded the priority on the economy and then upgraded the priority of public health. And then the government has taken measures to contain the widespread of COVID-19 and make sure enough beds for those who are infected. But there's also confusion, between the central government and the regional government or the local governments. Who should do what? Yeah. And this is where governance has been, quote unquote, abandoned by those who are in the government. Also, there's uncertainty at the central government. Who is making the policies? Is it the Ministry of Health or is it the task force? Also, whether the current situation is an emergency situation or it is not an emergency situation. The president issued a decree, presidential decree, which stated that the current pandemic is a force majeure for Indonesia, meaning that the government will not abide to the regulations in a normal situation, but it has to adjust itself in a crisis situation. I mentioned about 3 levels, but actually it's 4 levels because after the lockdown, the post-lockdown, next slide. The post-lockdown is one, now the public become weary of the lockdown as they wanted to get their freedom back. You know, it's very difficult for people to stay at home, even though the government, through its campaign, it is better to stay home rather than going outside. But the people wanted to go out and then do their normal activities. Probably most of you in Indonesia still remember when the lockdown has been terminated. Well, it's not being terminated, but being relaxed. And then people on a certain Sunday went out and do exercise. And then this becomes a worry again for the government, especially the task force, that the widespread cannot be contained. And also the government is in dilemma whether or not allowing public spaces to be reopened. The dilemma is we want to make sure that people don't die because of the pandemic, but at the same time, we do not want people to die because they don't have jobs, they don't have monies. Yeah. So this is a dilemma which the government has to face. And also, there are various information in the social media that COVID-19 is a conspiracy. Yeah. Especially exemplified by the US President, Donald Trump, stated that, you know, this is the Chinese conspiracy, that this is something that is being done intentionally by the Chinese government. And this was broadcast in various social media, which some people believe in it. So the government now have the challenge of making or convincing the people that the pandemic is real. Yeah. It is not like what others were saying, that it is not real. Yeah. But it is real. So the handling of COVID-19 have shifted in Indonesia and becomes a political commodity for those who are against the government. They'll say that, you know, the government is making up, you know, on various policy on containment of the pandemic. And the next issue is the enforcement of regulations to prevent the widespread are not consistent, because on a certain event, the government will say, okay, it is all right. But on other event, they'll say, this is not, or this is prohibited. even on which area. Yeah. Is it, for example, in the local government level, is it the lockdown is being announced by the governor, or it is being announced by the central government? You know, those kind of things occur here in Indonesia. Even to whom, yeah, the enforcement of regulations. If you belong to a middle class lower, then the enforcement is very strict. But if you belong to the middle class upper, the enforcement is not that strict. So these are the various problems that is being encountered by the government. Let me end my keynote speech by telling you what we learned, the Indonesian experience from handling the COVID-19. First, the COVID-19 pandemic is a world crisis that is unprecedented, never imagined by anyone, to which the government has a lot of room to improvise when they are making policies. And unfortunately, governance is being abandoned. Secondly, in a democratic country, it is challenging for the government to convince the public of certain policies, as they are countering views in social media to say otherwise. But if you look at China, China is considered to be a country that can handle the COVID-19 pandemic in a good way. Because in China, there's no democracies. In China, there's only one political party. And in China, people are very afraid of the government. Meaning that in a crisis, one command is very important. In crisis, let there be no democracies. Yeah. In crisis, we have to make sure who is calling the shot, who is making the policies in time of crisis. I'm not looking at China, but since we are owned by the Indonesian army, I think the discipline from the army, from the military, is very important in coping this kind of situation, because we are not in a very normal situation. That is why at a certain period in Indonesia, there is a discussion that there should be an entity that controls everything. But unfortunately, because of democracies, this did not happen. But we have to acknowledge that in a democratic country, it is challenging. Yeah. Look at the US. President Trump does not believe COVID-19, but Joe Biden do. So next is the government, whether central or local, are making policies based on a trial and error, as time does not allow them to make good planning and good preparations. They have to make policies, in this situation. And again, if you look at the army, in whatever situation, they have to be swift, they have to be quick, and they will think about the consequences later. But as civilians, usually we will prepare everything, discuss very thoroughly, but when it comes to the decision being made, everything is too late. We, the civilians, need to learn from the military. And lastly, it seems to me that law enforcement is not the only answer to make public observe the regulations for the pandemic to not widespread. Because many officials came to me and then asked, why is it the regulations or the law are unable to make sure that people observe the regulations? Well, a country like Indonesia, which the people I categorize as not law-minded society, you need to have a very strict law enforcement, and there's no discrimination. Everything, the regulation, provided in the regulation should be applied to everyone. Yeah. But if you do discrimination on, enforcing the laws and regulations, and it becomes a political commodity, then it is going to be very difficult to make sure that laws and regulation is observed. With that, I will end my keynote speech, and thank you very much for your attention. And I look forward to the discussion by scholars from various countries, their experience, and probably they may disagree with me, so be it. This is a forum for us to discuss, and there's of course a academic freedom that we need to maintain here. Thank you very much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for the keynote speech, Professor Hikmahanto Juwana. Now, the next agenda, ladies and gentlemen, there is certificate giving from Kapsipi to General Ahmadiyani University Rector, Professor Hikmahanto Juwana. The certificate is giving because it's such an honor to have the keynote speaker such as Professor Hikmahanto. We thank you for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me introduce you to Indonesian culture. Because today is the 6th anniversary of Kapsipi, there will be a ceremony. It's really unique because we have something that yellow, and then it can be eat, and it's called tumpeng. So there is a tumpeng ceremony. To the professor, There is a philosophical meaning on every part of traditional tumpeng or yellow rice in Indonesia. According to folklore in Java and Bali, the cone-shaped tumpeng is a mystic symbol of life and ecosystems. So this tumpeng rice symbolizes that all the government science department in Indonesia can help our country to equate and overcome this COVID-19 together. The tumpeng will be given by Professor Utang to the General Ahmadiyani University Rector Professor Hikmahanto Juwana as a symbol of celebration of 6th anniversary of Kapsipi. Please give an applause. Now, should we cut the cake first or take a photo together, sir? Because there's a cake for the ceremony also. Sixth anniversary cake for Kapsipi. There's a candle, but sir, sorry, we cannot blow the candle as usual though. The candle couldn't be blown due to COVID-19 because we're gonna eat the cake though. We should make sure that it's safe for COVID. Now, all the participants will take the group photos together. Please get things ready to the online participant. Now to do all the participant online, please turn on your camera because we're gonna take the group photos together, online and offline. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. All the participants will have a break for 5 minutes. See you in 5 minutes. kabel yang dari Estonia. Siapa yang punya nomornya ya? Di follow up dulu. Di grup. Di grup. Good morning, welcome back to the international seminar after the break. Now, before we move into the discussion and seminar, there's one last procession. There is a placard given by the Kapsipi to the Government Study Department of Unjani. Prof. Utang and Mr. Yamardi, the floor is yours. First, the placard is given to Professor Utang by Mr. Yamardi, the head of Government Science Department Program in General Ahmadiyani University. Mas kameramen yang baju krem boleh minggir sedikit menutupi kamera? Ya, terima kasih. Next, the placard will be given to Mr. Yamardi by Professor Utang. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's the time for the seminar and discussion. Now, I'm really sad because I'm gonna leave you guys for a minute because I will hand on my duty to the moderator today. Mr. Jumagar, can you show the CV of our moderator? The moderator for today's event is Dr. Dia Mutiarin from Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta University. She is expert for monitoring of public organization performance, public sector management, and public finance management, as you can see at the share screen. So now, without any further ado, Dr. Dia Mutiarin, the seminar, the time, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Indah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's international webinar hosted by Kapsipi and Universitas Ahmad Yani. This webinar entitled COVID-19 Pandemic Outbreak and Governance Discrepancies, Experience from Kazakhstan, Estonia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. This international webinar is held to commemorate the Kapsipi's 6th anniversary and in collaboration with Unjani. For this international seminar, we would like to sincerely express our appreciation to Kapsipi and Unjani who have collaborated so that this webinar event can be held. It is my pleasure to be the moderator for this international webinar. I'm Diah Mutiarin from Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta, also member of Kapsipi, will guide you for this panel session. Before we go further, I would like to let you know that your active participant is important throughout the season. Please everyone on mute to avoid background noises that may distract it from your listening to the webinar. We also would like to thank you to all your participants already joined for this webinar. For this webinar, we have 4 speakers. They will give a talk for each 20 minutes. And after the presentation session, we will have two series of question and answer session. Okay, let me introduce all of our speakers to all of you. We have first Dr. Ricardo Pelizo. He is the Associate Professor, Vice Dean, Graduate School of Public Policy, Nazarbayev University, Kazakhstan. He will be joined to present their work with Professor Dr. Omer Baris. And in this webinar session, they will discuss about the governance indicators, explain discrepancies in COVID-19 data. Good morning, Dr. Ricardo Pelizo and Professor Omar Baris.
Good morning, Dia. Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you too. Thank you, Dr. Ricardo Pelizo. Allow me to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Abel Polese. He is the Senior Research Fellow from School of Law and Government, Dublin City University, Ireland, Tallinn University of Technology, Estonia. Good morning, Dr. Abel Polese. Good morning. Hello. Oh, okay. From Professor Omar Baris, please help him to unmute his speaker button because he cannot unmute himself. Would you help him?
Thank you very much.
Indah, please. Okay. Maybe Dr. Abel has not joined this webinar, so we will move to our third speaker, Assistant Professor Srirat Gohwong, PhD, He works at Department Political Science and Public Administration, Kasarasat University, Thailand. Good morning, Dr. Srirat.
Good morning.
You
Nice to
already
meet you.
there. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, and our the only one women speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Halimah. Good morning, Dr. Halimah.
Good morning, Dr. Dia.
Yes, nice to meet you again.
Yes, thank you.
Associate Professor Dr. Halimah binti Abdul Manaf now is currently the Deputy Dean of School of Government from University Utara, Malaysia. Allow me to give detailed information about our speakers because we need to, maybe we want to know how are their records towards their work so far. Dr. Ricardo Pelizo is the associate professor, and he got his bachelor in international studies on 1997 and from Johns Hopkins University, right, Dr. Ricardo? Is that right?
I got a bachelor in philosophy in 1995 from the University of Bologna. I got a graduate diploma from Johns Hopkins in 97. I got a master from Johns Hopkins in political science in 2002. And then I got a PhD in political science in 2004, also from Johns Hopkins.
Thank you. So thank you very much for your additional information to complete our information. And so this all from Johns Hopkins University, Dr. Ricardo, from your graduate until your PhD.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And he has published many books and also many articles so far from 1997 until currently. Second, Dr. Abel Polis. Dr. Abel Polis is a senior research fellow with DCU Institute for International Conflict Resolution and Construction. He has been a Marie Curie Fellow at the Technical University of Dresden, Germany, on 2006 up to 2008, and then he moved to University of Edinburgh, and then also he ever joined to European Commission, and also he has done many visiting professors to several universities in America, Europe, and many universities in Asia. Good morning, Dr. Abel. Maybe he's not joined. Okay. As Assistant Professor Srirat, working as the lecturer at Department of Political Science and Public Administration, Faculty of Social Sciences, Kasarasat University, Bangke, Campus Science, Kasarasat University. He is from Thailand, so maybe he also has a good relation with many Indonesian university. Is that right,
Yes,
Professor Srirat?
correct.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And the fourth Professor, Associate Professor Dr. Halimah Abdul Manaf. Today he will talk about the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak and governance discrepancies experienced from Malaysia. Dr. Halimah now is the Deputy Dean and at the University Malaysia, Utara Malaysia, for School of Government and College of Law. So he has many research on public management in the field of human resource management in public sector, public management, knowledge management, and local government. Okay, I think that's all the brief introduction about our four speakers today.
No, sorry.
So for the first term, we would like to give the time to Dr. Dr. Ricardo Pelizo, since you already here, and the time will be around 20 minutes, more or less. Please take your time. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the organizers for the invitation. This presentation will be done by me and by Dr. Barish. He was not presented properly, but Professor Barish is an assistant professor of economics in the Graduate School of Public Policy at Nazarbayev University. He's done excellent work on COVID, and which is what we eventually published in World Affairs Journal, and which is what we're going to present today. So I hope Omer is around. Omer?
There is a technical problem. Yeah. This
Good
is
morning,
on the
everybody.
unmute button. He
Okay.
cannot, unmute himself.
All right.
Good morning.
So without further ado, we did the paper on governance indicators and COVID discrepancies because we were not trying to understand what factors are responsible for the spread of the disease or for the deadliness of the disease. I'm a political scientist. Professor Barish is a medical doctor. That's not of our area of expertise. There have been.
I'm not a medical doctor.
Sorry?
I'm not a medical doctor.
Yeah, we are not medical doctor, or not yet, at least. You know, and so we were not looking at the impact of you know, climate, age, demographics, comorbidity on the individuals' probability to contract the disease and sadly die. But we wanted to know, you know, but what we thought was interesting was to see, given what we know about good governance, a topic that has been of great importance for political sciences, scientists, for economists, for public administration people, for public policy, for the international community, and for developing countries as well. So, you know, what we think we know about governance, those allow us to get any understanding of what is happening in the course of this crisis, and hence we did the data analysis, and what we're going to present today to you is precisely that. So to start without any further ado, good governance is pretty much like corruption. Is something that we didn't pay much attention to until the mid-90s. And that's when, so to speak, the good governance agenda came into being. And it came into being because around that time, around 94, 95, there is a series of publications that comes out. You know, Susan Rose Ackerman published a book on the relationship between development and corruption. And in 1995, an IMF staff member, Mauro, published a book on corruption and growth, where he basically showed that, you know, corruption is responsible or has a negative impact on foreign direct investments because of the fact that countries are able to attract lower investments, they have slower growth, and as a result, they struggle to develop. What was interesting in the piece by Mauro is that he was talking about corruption, but the way in which he measured corruption included many of the things that are customarily considered part of good governance, you know, like rule of law, political stability, and so forth and so on. So these two studies were very important. In 1996, the World Bank, specifically the World Bank Institute, led by Daniel Kaufman, started publishing the good governance and the worldwide governance indicators, which are the data we're going to use, that we used in the analysis for the paper we are presenting. And so, you know, that's when a new interest and a growing interest in good governance emerged. And so some scholars started thinking, okay, what is this good governance? Various definitions were provided. You know, Hatter and Shah in 2005 wrote that governance is a multifaceted concept encompassing all aspects of the exercise of authority to formal and informal institutions in the management of the resource endowment of the state, and the quality of governance is determined by impact it exercises on the quality of life the citizens enjoy. For Daniel Kaufman, also in 2005, governance is defined as the traditions and institutions by which authority in a country is exercised for the common good. For Fukuyama, governance is the government ability to make and enforce rule, to deliver services, regardless of whether the government is democratic or not, while to sum up very quickly, both Rothstein and Theorel believe that governance it's good when it is impartial. So we have a lot of definition more or less overlapping, and that has led to a variety of ways in which good governance and good governance could be used. For example, according to Francis Fukuyama, good governance should be measured along two lines, which is the autonomy and the capacity of the state apparatus. Varieties of governance looks at a variety of indicators that could be used to measure how good democracy governance is. The best known effort to track how good the government, how good a government is, or how good a governance is represented by the worldwide governance indicators that were developed by the World Bank Institute. 1 second, sorry. Yes, Omer. And basically, Kaufman said, we understand that this good governance is the way in which we exercise power for the common good. But what are the key constitutive dimensions of of this good governance? And he thought, that at least 6 dimensions should be there. So we need to have political stability and absence of violence, which means that, there's no terrorism, there's political leaders are changed in a formally procedurally correct way, to elections and not because of coup d'etats or military takeovers. The state apparatus, the government should have the ability to control corruption, which has been, as you know, a key problem for many developing countries that, in spite of the fact that in many cases are incredibly rich in terms of the resource endowment that they have at their disposal, they struggle to make progress along the developmental path. The key insight in this respect was provided by a paper by Daniel Kaufman, Lloyd Zobaton, and Cray in 1999 that showed that countries that are that have a higher level of transparency. What am I? Oh, sorry. Hello. Can you hear me?
We hear you, Ricardo. I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you too.
Okay. No, because I was not sure. No, go back, Omera, to the previous slide. And so corruption is known to be a problem because even countries that are very rich in natural resources, they have oil, they have other resources, they cannot translate this underground wealth in wealth on the surface, or even when the state is able to generate a revenue from the extraction and the sale of these commodities and natural resources. These resources are not put to a good and efficient and effective use, and therefore, countries that technically have all the ingredients to be growing very fast and making progress in terms of development, so securing longer lives to their population, to reduce infant mortality, to boost literacy, and to do all the things that we associate generally with development. They're not able to do so because resources are squandered, talent is squandered, and so forth and so on. So controlling corruption is absolutely important to in order for a government to be of a high quality and for governance to be good. Needless to say, and this ties in with what the rector said at the beginning in his keynote speech, government effectiveness has to be there. Governments have to have the ability to enforce the policies that they design and they think would be good for the country. A government that is totally inept and totally unable to perform anything to cope with a crisis or to design and implement and enforce rules is a government that is not very good. Here what we need is to have, on the one hand, coming up with good regulations, which is what worldwide governance indicators capture when they speak about the regulatory quality. But then we need the ability not only to have good laws in principle or on paper, but these laws need to be properly and effectively enacted. And of course, there's a need for the rule of law, because we wanted that there is a certain clarity and consistency in the way norms and rules are applied, so that whatever rule and norm is applied to one citizen is applied to everybody. There's no preferential treatment. You know, that's also a theme that that emerged from the speaker of the keynote speaker when he said, you know, sometimes rules don't apply in a similar way to different people depending on their socioeconomic well-being. That actually indicates that the rule of law is not properly upheld. You know, rule of law means we make the rules in a certain way. You know, there's a due process through which rules are designed, and then these rules need to be enforced and implemented consistently. You know, here in the slide we put the rule of law twice because of course we like the rule of law, but in reality the sixth
the last one is going to be voice and accountability.
And accountability, yes, because you know, because for a government to be good, he has to respond to the needs of the population. You know, governments are not there to do their own business and to think, you know, and to look after their own interests. They're looking at the interest of society, and therefore it's very important that you know, they give a chance to the citizens to express their views, their, you know, their needs, their demands. That's the voice part. And at the same time, they, you know, there has to be accountability, because they need to respond for their action. You know, there was a problem. This is a, you know, I'm not sure what we are requested here, but I will respond later. So what we need is to have, you know, the ability for the citizens to ask questions from the government or through the parliament to the government and say, okay, we had this problem, we had these needs, what have you done? Was your response good enough? Because in the absence of accountability electorally or vertically from the government, by the government to the citizens, or between institutions, which is what is known as interinstitutional accountability, you know, our structure and the performance of our government is not very good. Okay, next slide, please, Omer. So, so basically, you know, this data set was created, this data were used, lots of analyses have been performed to show or to test whether and to what extent good governance yields economic, socioeconomic, developmental dividends, whether good governance is really good. You know, and you know, and the evidence has generally been that, in fact, you know, no matter how you measure development, you know, good governance seems to be associated with higher level of development. An interesting finding that, and there was an article that appeared a few years ago in Nature, which is the most important science publication in the world, showed that actually the deadliness of earthquakes is also related to the level of good governance. And the idea there was in countries where there is a lot of corruption and where governance is poor, you know, the standards for constructing building are not respected. You know, the quality of the construction are not monitored. And that's why when these countries with low levels of governance are hit by very strong earthquakes, like the one sometimes you have in Indonesia, you know, these earthquakes have a more devastating kind of impact on people, and a greater number of people dies than if a similarly strong earthquake had struck anywhere else. And so we thought, you know, let's see what we find once we correlate our data, the good governance data with the data on COVID. And Omer, next is you or me?
I can continue from here.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo, for the great introduction. And when we were locked down in March, starting like the rest of the world, we start following that data, especially COVID data, like the rest of the world. And mid-March, mid-April, we start collecting data, and one of the things we observed is, okay, these numbers correlate, just like eyeballing the data gives us lots of correlation with the governance indicators or the development levels. So let's check if this is just like a misleading observation, or there is some serious analysis that can show in either direction. So we start collecting data almost on real time, on a daily basis. Like we collected data from at that time, there were only two sources. One was the Worldometers, or now it's Our World in Data. The other one is the European Center for Disease Control, Disease Prevention and Control. And then the worldwide governance indicators data was already available at the World Bank website, together with the World Development Indicators. Now, the test data back then was very incomplete, very imperfect, and with no common standard of reporting. We collected from various sources, including Wikipedia, Worldometers, and World in Data. The testing data is much more better shape right now, but as you will see, we have written our paper mid-May, and we submitted it by May 15. So our paper relies on the preliminary analysis, and lots of things happened since May that might not be covered in the published version of the paper. What we see, I mean, this is, I guess, the most important part that we observed in the data set. If we look at high governance countries with low governance countries, the first case is announced at least a month earlier in the high governance countries. The first death is, again, more than 3 weeks distance. And high governance countries announce almost 100 times more cases and more than 200 times more deaths in total, and 50 times more cases and 125 times more deaths per million. So if we adjust it for population, we still see a significant difference in terms of the data. So we start questioning, okay, either this virus has very anti-development or anti-capitalistic tendencies, so it tries to hit like all these rich nations first, and then saves the poorer or less developed countries later. But there is something wrong with this data, or something that we can raise our eyebrows, and we can suspect the quality of the data. Here, especially when you look at the testing data as of May, the tests per million, they actually have 25 times more tests by May in terms of the tests per million. Now, we use two statistical techniques. One is looking at the proportional hazard estimation, that is for the duration model, well-known model. Whenever you look at the number of days that survives risk of hazard, here hazard is detecting your first COVID case. Most of the data in terms of number of cases or number of deaths or the fatality rate has changed since May, but this data, the duration data, did not change, because once you announce, the first day is not going to change. I mean, here I will show you the graphs in a couple of slides, but the first day of your COVID death or the first death, it will not change even if the number of cases, number of deaths will change. So for the second part of analysis, probably the analysis will look a little bit more different compared to what we did in May. So we are much more stronger in the duration model than our results in the cosine estimation. Here, what we see, this is a much more numeric explanation of my previous slide. Here, look at the reported COVID cases it is 82 days. The first case is 82 days after December 31st in low governance countries and 48 days in high governance countries. And cases per million, 39 to 2,000. I mean, here the numbers actually give us like much more brighter, much more interesting picture, because number of cases 580 to 5,600 in total. Reported deaths 97 to 75 the first day. So there is like a more than 3 weeks difference between the first death in the high governance countries and the first death in the low governance countries. Number of deaths from 21 to 4,500. That's per 1 million. It is 1 to 125. So these are like some differences that we cannot rule out immediately. Like there is something wrong here. I mean, it doesn't make sense for an impartial virus to affect different countries differently. And look at the deaths per case, the case fatality ratio. There was a significant difference in terms of death per case when we were writing the paper. We started writing the paper by the end of March, and then we were following it. Death per case was like 2 times higher in the low governance countries, but the data actually adjusted very well. By the time we finished the paper, that part actually smoothed out, and then they came to the same level as of May 10. But all the other data remained significantly different. So, and then when we look at the test numbers here, important part is test per million. That is 1.5 thousand. That is compared to 38,000. So it is like from approximately 20 times difference. And again, there is some similarity in the number of percentage of test positiveness. So the virus is not that partial. When you look at the percentage of positivity, it is close again across all these governance groups, but number of tests or tests per million are significantly different. And let's look at the countries that were very successful in fighting COVID, that there were not a single case in these countries by May of 10. Of course, I tell successful in the fight against COVID a little bit sarcastically, because if you check these countries, either these are very small island states or in the Pacific, or like the countries that does not allow any kind of information freely. So it is not that that does not measure too much about the existence or presence of the virus, but instead it tells about how this data is collected and announced. So here is our the day of the first confirmed case. Here you see there are like 2 groups. In the first group, there is almost no relationship among countries. Here we have like low governance countries and high governance countries almost announcing around the same. This is like the first bunch of countries which detected the COVID case in the first 35 to 40 days. That is approximately 5 to 6 weeks. But after that, something happened, especially in the beginning March. The detection of the first virus has a strong correlation. You see the confidence interval here, and then you see how the slope of the line is changing, especially after the 40th day. Here we see a significant difference between low governance countries announcing later, like and then high governance countries, high governance score countries announcing at least a month earlier. Now, I will not spend too much time. Yes.
We are told we have 3 minutes left for the presentation.
Okay, that's why I will skip the details of our statistical modeling, but I will skip the more interesting stuff. In our paper, you can find more details about the techniques we use. Here, the common common question might be, okay, you are just looking at the correlation between WGI score and the duration days. No, we actually try to control all the usual suspects in this model. One of them is like population density, old age population, how they are related to tourism sector. Like we try to control as many possible cofactors, covariates as possible so that we can single out, like we can rule out the possibility of governance indicators. But even after including those variables, we have strong correlation between COVID presence or catching COVID and governance score. Here you see that as long as these lines are parallel or do not intersect, do not cross each other, that is some kind of a test on the Cox model. You see that the difference between low governance and high governance, especially the green and the blue lines, is significantly different. It's not possible that these can actually cross. So our conclusion is not by mistake. Now, here, these results, we are less confident in terms of today's data versus data in May. So, but we looked at the zero inflated negative binomial model, that is like the second column and the sixth column in terms of cases and number of in terms of deaths. You see that again, the WGI score is still significantly contributing to the number of cases and to the number of deaths. Here you see that cases per population shows a significant increase by the governance score. You see deaths per population. This is after correcting for population. You see again, high governance countries actually have more casualties. And here, reported deaths per case. This is interesting. Once you announce the case and the degree of fatality is similar across all governance scores. This is again one of the things that our previous results are not accidental, especially when we correct the number of deaths per number of cases, then we get a flat line we expect from an impartial virus. Here, I mean, I will leave this slide to you, to your own reading. If you have any questions, we can address those questions. How are we doing on time? Ricardo?
Sorry, I had muted myself. Okay. No, I mean, the key point is that, and this brings us back to what the director was saying before, we don't think that countries that have lower level of governance cannot do a good job. That was not the point of our presentation. You know, what or the point of our analysis. What we found, I think, and it's absolutely crucial, is that, you know, good governance matters because, you know, countries with higher level of governance perform more tests and they're more transparent in the way they report the data. You know, there are some countries, we didn't go too much in the country specific details, but there were countries like, you know, like, for example, North Korea, which at the beginning of the crisis is between China, which is the epicenter of the crisis, and South Korea, that at the time was the single most important place for the spread of the disease. And North Korea reported, you know, it's true that they've been locked down for several years, but you know, this raises some question for us to the reliability of the data. So the point that we were trying to make is that you know, we can also infer to some extent that the good governance matters because in countries with better governance, even the health sector works better, and therefore, you know, the deadliness of the disease can be contained. But what is really important is that, you know, governments in countries with better governance are more transparent in reporting the data. And, you know, and so, you know, the director at the beginning of the presentation said, you know, in the middle of the crisis, opposition forces or forces or social forces that are critical of what the government is doing can use the crisis to their political advantage. You know, in countries where governance, final sentence, in countries where governance is good, the government is transparent and that increases or does not compromise.
Sorry for the interruption.
Sorry?
Sorry for the interruption.
Okay.
Because we still have 3 others presenters.
Yeah, I'm done.
Here.
I'm done. I'm finished.
Yeah. Your topic is very interesting with a very good data. We also thinking that this is the new things in the COVID data. So we will discuss it later. I think there will be more questions to address to you and both of you about this data and how the world governance indicators as a matter in this COVID data. Thank you. So we will move to the second, our second speakers. Thank you for Dr. Ricardo and Professor Omar Baris for presenting the data. We will move to Dr. Abel Polis. Hello, good morning, Dr. Abel Polis. Hello. Oh, maybe he is not joined yet. He is not able to join since maybe he has a technical problem. So I think we will move to our third speakers. Please welcome Assistant Professor Srirat Gohwong. Yeah, since you already here and ready to present your presentation. Time is yours.
Okay.
20 minutes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. Sharing screen. Yes. Today, this is my time to present about our Thai cases, Thailand cases. Okay. Yes, here is the agenda that I will present today. The first now is the current situation of Thailand. We have data from Department of Disease Control or DDC, Ministry of Health. You see that we have a cumulative number of infections, 3,892 recovered cases, 3,745 cases in hospital, 87 deaths, only 60. Second, the Thailand measures for controlling COVID-19. These measures have been mainly done by Thai government since January the 1st of this year. They could be classified into the governing model of Vikai Peter, traditional model, market model, and participatory model. You can read more about this kind of model in this very nice book. This is one of the best book in the field of public administration because it consists of lots of theory and concept in public administration. They all are present comprehensive. Okay, for traditional model, I can tell you briefly that this model is based on law-based public administration or web-oriented bureaucracy. For Thailand, the COVID-19 is controlling mainly done by public agencies with a set of laws. There are at least 8 laws, key laws, to control COVID-19 that you see on the screen. That, however, there are top 2 law in Thailand. This one, Communicable Disease Control Act 2015, Emergency Decree on Public Administration in Emergency Situation 2005. Let me tell you a little bit that in Thailand, we use law and paper-based administration in order to control our state central right. When we use this kind of law, it means that if you violate law, you will get punishment. So many of Thai people, we I have to say that we obey law. We follow law. I have to say we have a good discipline to do that. So we can control COVID-19 effectively. The next one, it is that's a good of law number 3, 5, 6, and 7 in order to help people and increase our economic growth, especially the last one. We raise loan to solve the problem of SME and individual people of Thailand. And next one, when we discuss about public administration in Thailand, in the morning, I have heard that a professor that says about you cannot control about COVID-19 by bureaucracy, right? Because but for Thailand we use a team. This one, National Communicable Disease Committee, is a public agency that is run by team management. So it's more flexible to cope with COVID-19. COVID-19 is a crisis, right? When we use a benevolent bureaucracy, we must know that the nature of bureaucracy is for routine job, right? It's not for crisis. But this kind of method in Thailand, we use team in order to cope COVID-19, and I think we can do quite effectively. For the next one is this market model of capital. This model comprises a market mechanism and new public management, that the application of management technique in the public sector. However, for Thailand, we focus on new public management via database technology, both relational and non-relational database, with 3 key applications: Mo Chana, or Dr. Chana. Chana is in Thai, it stands for win. Okay, and Thailand Plus and Thai Chana. This kind of application, we can collect data of people with take care of their because Thailand good governance. This come from this kind of World Bank report in 1989. Sorry. In this I have to say, in this paper, it's nice paper. You will see that we try to find a better balance between the government and the government. For Thailand now, we are focusing on data governance in the public sector. This kind of data concept and theory we borrow from private sector, especially in terms of database. For example, at least the book of CGDAT, the 5th normal form. And then for Thailand, we have we launch this kind of act, Digital Government Administration and Services Act 2019, in order to promote standardized data management of public sector in its activity. That is very interesting, because nowadays, when we collect data of people, we must answer many questions. Why did you collect the data? How about security? How about usage of data? Who collect? And so on. That is very interesting. No need for a Kamibus expert. it means that bureaucrat can do everything without accountability on examination from outside. No. Cybersecurity Act and Personal Data Protection Act 2019 is make this kind of data collection from people much more complex in Thailand. I mean, it is more difficulty for Thai bureaucrat to run. You know, I am doing some research. You know, for Thai bureaucrat, we have at least 104 laws. When to provide public service in Thailand, you have to take care of a lot of law that we try to control. And with the emerging of IT and this kind of law, it means that good governance can be increased in Thailand. Because when we use IT, we know that in fact we are in an invisible jail, right? Because when you connect with IT, we know where you are, who you are, and what you have done in the system, right? There is no privacy. Privacy is just a page in our history, right? When we use IT. For the next one, participatory model for Thailand, you know, government focus on citizen participation by the use of face masks. We try to increase awareness of people when you go outside, especially you are in the place that we have many people, you have to put on the mask. That is very interesting. However, the next one is very interesting when we discuss about Thailand. We are doing something that we call vegetable gardening. Because in Thailand, due to the COVID-19, food security is one of the big problems in Thailand. Because sometimes food cannot reach to people in the city. So now, you know, in Chiang Mai, a giant province of Thailand, we have something that we call Chiang Mai Urban Farm or Suan Pak Khon Mueang. It means that this area is a former garbage dumped in the middle of Chiang Mai, but it's a cooperation between people and Chiang Mai municipality. The next one, it is vegetable garden at the Wat Pa Khao or White Court Temple at the Mueang Chiang Mai district. You know, vegetable garden is done by monks. That is very interesting because people cannot give food to monks anymore due to COVID-19. Sometimes people do not allow to go outside home. So this one is very interesting. Even food production area at the Wang Thong Law community in Bangkok. Vegetable garden at Ban Tiem Phan. Ban Tiem Phan is a care center for other homeless people. There is cooperation between Thai Health Promotion Foundation and Ministry of Social Development and Human Security. That is very interesting. After COVID-19, I think not of the stuff in Thailand has totally different because people in the city, many people will do this one, vegetable gardening for themselves. They can create food for themselves. That is very interesting. And then the next one is what I want to tell you. It is about stateless-based public administration. For public administration today, now we have two paradigms already. This is my paradigm since 2009. In the old day, we believe that public administration, you all know that public administration depend on state, right? Everything that we study, okay, state is the main provider of public goods or services, right? with cooperation with private sector and people sector, right? That, however, we have something that more than public sector that we call a state-based public administration. For example, that we discuss about a deep web and dark web, that is underground website, non-government-based cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum Classic, Ripple, Monero, and so on. Now there are more than 2,000 cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrency, you know, that is beyond the power of the state. According to my research in 2018 about the state of the art of cryptocurrency, and you know, we have at least 140 currency that we can label it as a privacy-based cryptocurrency, that you can hide all data about money. For example, the amount of money, the data of sender, the data of receiver. That is the heaven of the people who want to disobey the state. You can finance terrorism. You can do human trafficking, drug trafficking, and so on. Illegal affair. You can. What I want to tell you, it is for COVID-19, the state public administration in Thailand will play big roles about blockchain and non-government-based cryptocurrency. Why do I say about non-government-based cryptocurrency? Because today we have some government-based cryptocurrency such as Internon. Internon is a big mountain in Thailand. Internon of Thailand is the government-based cryptocurrency of Thailand. It is in the experiment state. What I want to tell you, it is since 2017.
Sorry for the interruption. The time is remaining 4 minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much. We have since 2007. We have survey from Siam Blockchain, a company that Thai people start to use cryptocurrency, and that is very interesting that 7.1% of the respondents used for buying food, goods for their daily life. Last year, according to data from Asia Blockchain level, 10% of Thai people are the owner of cryptocurrency. What I want to tell you it is, I use data from Ministry of Health and Investing.com, and I try to find the relationship between, for example, I used only Bitcoin price due to time limitation, and I found that there was a moderate positive relationship between price of Bitcoin and the cumulative number of infections in Thailand. It means that we have a good chance in order to increase our economic growth via cryptocurrency market. For suggestion, in Thailand, COVID-19 controlling and solution are mainly based on state-led public administration. However, blockchain as a part of state-led based public administration can be a solution for increased economic growth in Thailand. However, we must set rule of law and regulation in order to make sure that we can create data governance when we do something that we call verification of people. That for Thailand now, we have immunity passport. No, I'm sorry, I cannot say like that. For Thailand, for nowadays we have for this one, COVID-19 Credential Initiative or CCI, they tried to create immunity passport in order to collect data of people that when you travel abroad, in order to stop the spread of COVID-19 without compromising the privacy of its user. I suggest that Thailand should join this kind of technology community. And because Thailand now we try to open our country for foreigner and tourists. So if we can guarantee about the privacy of the tourists and foreigner who can come in Thailand, it is can increase our economic growth with good governance, especially data governance. Okay, thank you for your good attention. This is all of my present.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srirat, for the interesting presentation to all of us. This is about how state-based public administration trying to address the COVID pandemic in Thailand, particularly in Thailand. Okay, we will have also many questions for Dr. Srirat on the ask and answer session. Now we are going to move to our third presenters, Dr. Halimah Abdul Manaf. Dr. Halimah Abdul Manaf will present her talk on COVID-19 pandemic outbreak and governance discrepancies, experience from Malaysia. Dr. Halimah, please, time is yours.
Okay, thank you so much to Dr. Moderator, Dr. Diah Mucharim. Assalamualaikum and good day, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to share my experience about how Malaysia deals in terms of providing governance assistance to the people. Okay. So for the session this morning, it's more in terms of what Malaysia government has doing and still doing it in terms of dealing with the needs of the peoples to help, particularly among necessary society who needs really assistance from the government. Okay. So, all right. Okay, if we see that since the pandemic affect around the world at the end of 2019, and if we see in the case of Malaysia, since end of 2019 and until now, we still doing our grassroots work in order to face and order to minimize the numbers of COVID-19 cases. Like in Malaysia, if we see that until 14 November 2020, there is about 46,209 cases for the positive COVID-19. Out of, we have about 35 millions of the citizen in Malaysia. So, and at this moment, I would say that we are in the third phase or third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the early phase, in the early wave of COVID-19, whereby I would say that in early or end of the 2019, we can see that this is first wave of the COVID-19 that hit Malaysia and also around the world. So in this case, what government of Malaysia doing, or I think many of the countries take the same action in terms of reducing this pandemic from this spread out of the country. What we have doing on March 18, 2020, the Malaysia government has decided to implement a lockdown policy whereby we call it as a movement control order for the first time. To limit community movement in preventing the spread of COVID-19, which was increasingly extensive. In its implementation, the Malaysia government asked the public not to travel abroad. Okay. And prohibits activities that involve many people, including religious activities, sport, social and cultural activities. Besides that, Malaysia government also closed public places such as education institution, all governments and private offices, except those included in essential services such as financial, electricity, telecommunication, and others that very needed at that time. It same goes to the impose for the criminal law for people who violate lockdown regulation. So in this situation, for the first time, Malaysia are very serious in the lockdown, and the effect of that we can see only one digit of cases arise. And then after that, Malaysia open for the activities with the specific SOP. It means that each of the sector who would like to open their business or start their activities, they need to follow very strict SOP. However, although various policies and strategy has been formulated by Malaysia government, but still we need to see the specific activities that has been done by government agencies, particularly in terms of dealing with the specific policies, how to deal or how to reduce the case of the pandemics. So in the context of Malaysia, I would like to highlight the specific 6 principles used by the particularly local government Malaysia in handling the pandemic of COVID-19 and how it can help in prevent public to expose with this kind of the pandemic. So actually there is a few good governance principle or indicator has been raised up by any agencies, including World Health Organization. But in this case, I would like to use the good governance concept that has been proposed by the World Bank in terms of, I would say there is 6 principle that has been highlighted by World Bank. Although we can see that there is other broad concept covering all aspects of the way a country is governed, embracing its economic policy, regulatory framework, specific law to promoting good governance in terms of providing good policy advice, financial support, technical assistance to the entire citizen in this country. So in this context of discussion, I would like to highlight the good governance indicators that been used in this study in order to see how local government particularly take action in terms of providing inclusivity by having participation for the society, fairness, accountability, transparency and efficiency that we can see has been promoted by the local government. So in terms of participation in this study, would like to see how the engagement of the stakeholders in the decision-making process and implementation related with the COVID-19 issues. Secondly, I want to see in terms of fairness that has been proposed in the policy programs related with the COVID-19, that there is no discrimination has been emerged in the implementation of the policies of the programs. Thirdly, in terms of the accountability, whereby we want to see where official or institution in each area hold the entire responsibility towards the action or inaction that has been taken related with COVID-19 programs. Fourth is about transparency that we can see in terms of how the government agencies observe, scrutinize, and evaluate the information given to the public, either the public able to access that particular information or not. In terms of efficiency, we want to see to what extent the program policy has been implemented are really being maximized or has been implemented at the optimum level of resources. And lastly, in terms of the effectiveness We want to see too how the program has been achieved and in line what has been intended for that particular programs. So actually, for this study, I look at closely the good governance practices in the capital city, which is Kuala Lumpur. So in this case, I take Kuala Lumpur City Hall as examples how good governance practice has been implemented. But actually, the scenario or the practice quite similar in other regions too, not unnecessary in the capital city, because as the keynote speaker talked this morning, mentioned that in Indonesia, they have different level of the government and different level of action. However, it's a bit different in Malaysia, whereby all the instruction and regulation come from the federal level, which is come from the safety ministry and health ministry. So the announcement and regulation either come from the senior officer or from the prime minister. So these two person is the eligible source that need to be referred and always make announcement weekly to the people. Okay, so either at the local government or state level, we just follow that whatever has been decided by the federal levels. Okay, so in terms of the participation, we want to see how local government, particularly in the Kuala Lumpur region, how they deals with the these 6 principles of the good governance. As I mentioned to you that although the case of the discussion is more on the case of DBKL or Kuala Lumpur City Hall, but actually the implementation is same with others region. Okay, in terms of the participation, if we see that for instance, for the Federal Territory of Kuala Lumpur, or I call it here DBKL, has been collaborate with and participate with several government agencies in striving of controlling the spread of coronavirus among the community in the cities. So several strategies have been implemented via this participation. For instance, DBKL have participating with the Ministry of Housing and Local Government through Malaysia Fire and Rescue Department, whereby right here is JBPM, actually stand for Malaysia Fire and Rescue Department, whereby they do a public sanitation process in area which frequently visited and touched by the public and homeless people, such as public landmarks, public market, public escalator, public street, toilet, amenities, and others. So this initiative normally will take place on the weekend, since the day not too many people visit the place, and further enabling the operation to run smoothly. So in stress of enforcing the standard operational procedure, as I mentioned in the early part, although in the second wave and third wave after the totally lockdown of Malaysia, Malaysia of government decide to give some space for the business to run their business with the small scales. Same goes to other sector too. However, they need to follow very strict standard operation procedure by the authority towards the public and other government agencies too. So since the condition movement control order has been implemented in the May 2020, there is DBKL with other agencies such as construction industry, Ministry of Health, and Royal Malaysia Police has conducted several inspections on the building in construction site in order to make sure that workers on the construction site are complies with the given SOP from the authorities. Okay, that's one example how we are really go to the ground to see actually in terms of practice either our workers and citizens comply with the SOPs or not. So
Dr.
generally,
Halima,
yes.
there is another 4 minutes remain.
Okay, generally, as other country, we are really strict in terms of physical distancing. Always use face mask, hand sanitizer. That is become a culture in our countries nowadays. In terms of fairness, DBKL prepare about actually more than 1,000 vacancies for the people, so that they able to find their job when MCO was removed. So beside that, DBKL also initiate a certain training to strengthening their psychology, as well as to give skill for those unemployed during the MCO. And then in terms of accountability, of course, DBKL need to hold the whole responsibility to make sure that people not enter to the restricted area. In terms of the transparency, every local government will do the town hall session to let people know which area. Of course, we have like in like Thailand, we also have the digital platform to announce any assistance initiative given by the government. But on top of that, because as we know that in Malaysia, not all people are access with the internet capability, internet infrastructure. So the another initiative by City Hall is go to the town hall session to let people know what kind of the assistance given by government. So we have two platform which is online and offline to make sure that people are aware about what initiative and information should be known by citizen. And furthermore, in terms of efficiency, there is a guideline that has been improvised from time to time according to the current needs, and regulation was provided by the federal governments. And lastly, in terms of the effectiveness, to make sure that people are really safe, and the businesses or any activities that has been open for the peoples are safe. And the BKL always state the initiative by cooperate with others authorities and community to make sure, particularly NGOs, to make sure that people are aware they will be fined if they are against any rules by the government. So as conclusion, I would say that in terms of good governance, yes, we are in practice 6 principles, but on top of that, each of the local government have their own initiative by giving additional information to the people so that they are aware what has been needed by the government and what the new regulation has been practiced at the local government. I think with that, I end my presentation. Thank you for listening. Hope we will have some collaboration with others partner to see the best practices for each country. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Halima, for a very excellent presentation about how the Malaysian government dealing with COVID-19. Now it's time for us to give the time for all audience to address their question. For this ask and answer session, I will open 2 sessions. First session will invite 4 participants, and the second one also will invite 4 participants. Make sure that all participants raise your hand if you want to address question and to whom is your question. And please write down your question in the chat button. Thank you. Welcome all audience or participants to raise your hand. Hello. Hello, Mbak Indah. Can you help me to inform me who are the participants who raise hand or already addressed to already addressed the question in the chat box. If I'm not mistaken, there are many participants in this webinar. We have more than 467 participants, and most of them are from Unisma, Unjani, UTA 45, Unicom, UGM, Universitas Gajah Mada Yogyakarta, UMY, Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. Okay, there is one question from Eloy Sinai. Mbak Eloy, are you here? Can you directly address your question? And to whom?
Yes, I'm here, Miss.
Yes, please. Time is yours, Mbak. Oh, okay, Mbak Ella, I will read your question. Maybe she is not ready to address the question, then I will read her question. Mbak Eloy Sinai Lerian from Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. Okay. I want to ask you a few things. WHO provides a solution that stringent restrictions are needed to save lives. I take the case in Indonesia. Several regions in Indonesia have implemented a lockdown or what is called the PSBB, large-scale social restriction. However, the reality that is happening in the field of cases of COVID-19 patients continues to increase. When we try to compare it with countries in the world that have not implemented lockdowns, that is Sweden, but positive cases of COVID-19 have reportedly decreased. So based on these cases, in your opinion, how effective are the lockdowns being implemented as a solution to reduce positive cases of COVID-19? I think it can be addressed to all of you, for presenters today, because we have 3 presenters. Starting maybe who want to respond? Dr. Ricardo or Professor Omer Baris, and then continue to Dr. Sirat and Dr. Halimah. Kindly please respond, Dr. Ricardo or Professor Omer Baris.
Well, this is completely outside of my expertise. I will excuse myself, like not going into that area because I don't know. My basic answer is I don't know. I haven't looked at the effectiveness, and I'm not an epidemiologist, virologist. I don't know how these functions scientifically are analyzed, so I will excuse myself from the answer.
I think I have a slightly different answer from Professor Barish. Last month, we held in my school the 4th annual conference of the Graduate School of Public Policy, and we had a panel that was devoted to COVID and government's responses to COVID. And we had presenters from Singapore, but we also had presenters from our own university who were analyzing the data on COVID-19 in Kazakhstan and how the response of the government that is closing the borders, closing the flights, enforcing the lockdown had an impact on the spread of the disease. And basically, you know, they did some statistical analysis controlling for the change in the climate, the change in the temperature, and they said, you know, changing the temperature made very little difference. What really mattered to stop the spread of the disease was the lockdown. So much so they said, if you look at the, you know, I can give you the data because, you know, I was taking some notes about it. The first case was detected in a city called Almaty on February 13, and by March 19, a quarantine lockdown was enforced, and then a week later it was strengthened. And if you look at the graph of the number of cases, you see that as soon or shortly after a lockdown was implemented and enforced, the number of cases came down. Then the lockdown was lifted, and the number of cases increased again. And when the second lockdown was implemented, I can tell you exactly on July the 5th, once again, we detected a decline. So the evidence that was presented by Dr. Prep in our conference was that, in his view, the most uncontroversial view was that lockdown was the single most effective way to prevent the spread or to curb the spread of the disease. So that's the best answer I can give you from our end.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ricardo, for the response. Also, Professor Omar Baris, who already responded to the addressing question. We would like to listen to other answer from this question. Dr. Srirat, please.
Okay, let me tell you about the case of Thailand about the lockdown. Okay, in Thailand, we try to create awareness of people, and when people awareness about the dangerous of COVID-19, and we try to use law to control, and then we use centralization, because when we discuss about crisis, as a speaker says in the morning, I think it's correct. No time for democracy. In terms of crisis, we need leader, we need team management, a team that can respond to the crisis effectively and quickly. So for Thailand, we use this kind of committee in order to cope with it, and we use application of IT in order to make sure that we can get I have to say real data, and with data governance and privacy. So what I want to tell you, it is when about lockdown, it is very difficult in measure in Thailand as well, because we have to find the balance between economy and the crisis. So what we do now, as I told you already, that we use law and we use IT, and then we use much more like vegetable gardening in order to help that we try to reduce about traveling of people. And you can I have to say, no need to go outside home to buy food. You can create by yourself. That is the case of Thailand that I can answer you now, because when we discuss about comparative, maybe for example, Thailand and Indonesia, the setting of our countries are very different. So you can learn from the experiences from other country, but finally you have to adapt it with your setting. That that is, I think today conference is very nice, because I have learned a lot from for example, for Kazakhstan on even Malaysia. And this all of my answer. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sirat, for giving answer in the perspective of Thailand. Dr. Halimah, please.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Maybe I can give some Malaysia experience in terms of, because in the first phase, we implemented MCO entirely. So at that time, we can see that we have single case. It means that MCO are really successful helping our country to reduce the numbers of cases. But as time goes, people are really needs to back to their economic activities because of they don't have income. So at that time, government open based on the range to the business, logistic, transportation to start their own business back. And we can see that after first MCO, and government allow for some industry to renew their business, and the cases start rising. Okay, and then government take another initiative to enforce MCO again, lockdown again to the specific province based on the increasing cases. So my point is, in the case of Malaysia, MCO is really one initiative that are helping to reducing the COVID-19 cases. On the other hand, government also provide another initiative to help people in terms of gain their income by allow with some restriction in terms of regulation, that if they would like to continue their business, they need to hold or need seriously implemented SOP or health conscious that has been given by health ministry as a guidance for them to run their business. At the same time, they need to concern in terms of make sure physical distancing and reducing the probability to get close with others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Halimah. This is really sharing with us about your experience in Malaysia. So I think I hope Mbak Loi already listened to all the speakers' answers on your question. Now we have another participant who have addressed their question. Mbak Regita Ardia from Unisma. Please directly address your question, Mbak.
First of all, I'm a man. Okay, so it's false.
Sorry, Regita.
It is okay. Okay. So I would like to ask a question, especially for all of the speaker. Here in Indonesia, a lot of people refuse to take the COVID test. They say that they were afraid, and they say that government just making up the case, like it is turned into a business. Like example, we have reached 5,444 people who had infected corona, and just one day, people just saying like, "Oh, this can be real." I mean, it is impossible to have such a big cases like this, and so they refuse to take the test because it is into a business. And my question is this kind of things is also happen in your country? And the other question, Indonesia is developing the vaccines, which our government state that these vaccines can stop the pandemic, especially Indonesia. And the question is, can these vaccines really stop the pandemic, or it is just causing any more problems? What do you think about that? I think that's all about my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Regita. Your question is very interesting. I hope you are not one of them also who are afraid to take the test of COVID.
No,
Okay.
I'm staying in the house.
Oh yeah, that's better at home.
Yeah.
Okay, please first turn going to Dr. Ricardo and Professor Omes, please.
Well, for the second question, I don't know about vaccines. I cannot say anything, but for the first question, I have a couple of observations since the beginning of this pandemic, since the early days of January, because I was traveling to Singapore around that time, and there were no tests, reliable tests back then. And then I started collecting data on the number of tests and what is the ratio of positiveness or positivity ratio in the number of in response to the number of tests taken. One of the things again, there is a huge discrepancy in the number of tests and the positivity ratio, but like especially in the first initial data, which gave us the impression that, okay, the governments or the health institutions were testing only the most serious cases. They were rejecting because the number of available tests were not that much, so they were rejecting most asymptomatic cases. In this situation, you would expect a high rate of positivity, but the highest we could find across countries was around 16 to 25% in most symptomatic cases. So the other thing that was missing, especially in that period, was the missing false positivity ratio or false positive numbers. I mean, what is the reliability of these tests? We still don't know. The false positives actually scares the public because they don't know if they turn out to be positive, although they are asymptomatic, what kind of quarantine measures are going to impose them? Are they going to be restricted from getting their income, or they're taking their kid to school, or I mean, in their daily routines? So there is an unreliable or uncertain expectations about the future with respect to the result of the test. That obviously creates some kind of hesitation among public. That is common almost in all across countries. At the same time, when people have more urgent business, like they want to take the flight, take the airplane, want to travel for urgent reasons, and they are more eager to take the test because they're obviously their cost is much more less, or expected benefit from taking the test is much more higher compared to the cost. So it's not surprising that overall public is hesitant to take the test because there are lots of discrepancies in the data, in the testing data, in the case data announced by various governments. So this again relates to our paper. I mean, how well you manage information is going to be indicative of how well you are going to manage the crisis. Ricardo, you want to add?
Thank you, Professor Omer. Please, Dr. Ricardo, if you have additional information regarding this question.
You know, I mean, I think that I cannot add anything to what Professor Baris has said, but my impression is that in a lot of places, the testing was not mandatory. You know, I mean, many people didn't have to take it. I mean, you know, so that's the very little I can say. So, you know, and then, you know, I defer to Professor Baris, who knows and is following this issue much more closely than I do.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ricardo. Okay, now we would like to listen to another two response to this question. Dr. Srirat, please. Dr. Srirat, you are still unmute.
Okay. Okay. For in my experience for Thailand, I think the UCAS is for the vaccine we don't know, but for the awareness of people, that's I give you my experience because on February I visit Switzerland to present my paper and at Lugano. And you know, on plane, I am only one guy who put puts the mask on my face. Okay, that is. I'm not the. I have to say, not the general people in the eyes of everyone on Friday. What I want to tell you it is when I come back earlier 2 weeks Thailand awareness of Thai people boom a lot, and then when we use law and we use centralized team in order to control of the data, government give official data to people every day. So it means that people fear this disease. So they start to take care of themselves. Furthermore, in Thailand, not only push the mask on the face, sometimes we try to collect food, especially in the city. A lot of food sold out. You cannot buy food. That is why that I present you vegetable gardening, because you have money. In the case of Thailand, in some area, you have money, but you cannot buy food. There is no food for you. You have to grow it up by yourself. So if awareness of people is quite high, so you can control about the disease. Okay, that is my contribution.
Thank you, Dr. Srirat. It is a very interesting experience, and also when we have money but we cannot buy foods, so how it is so sad for all of us. But maybe it can happen also in many countries. Okay, thank you. Now it is turn for Wan Halima. Please.
Okay, I think based on Malaysia observation, because in Malaysia we still don't have the vaccine yet. Okay, although a few attempts and experiment has been done, but until now we don't have vaccine to use for COVID-19 virus yet. Okay, so what has been explained to the society that we not simply sweat people in anywhere. Okay, we will do swab test for the people that suspended or have close contact with the positive cases. So but in the daily routine, if we would like to go to the specific place or building, we need to check for our temperature, and we need to, and everyone need to wear their face mask. So in other words, it's kind of the normal routine for the people to wear face masks everywhere. Although we same, many restaurant was closed, so means that for the food supplier or for the people who request for the foods to buy food, they still can buy from others, but they need to use Food Panda and other apps to help them to deliver their stuff and foods. Okay, I think that's all.
Yes. Thank you, Puan Halimah. There are many different situations in many countries also regarding this COVID-19, how the private sector, including groceries, including culinary, also responds to this growing COVID-19 pandemic. Okay. Thank you. We already have 3 questions for the first session, and we would like to open another second session for this question and answer, we would like to invite Ibu Hikmah Muhaimin from Universitas Muhammadiyah Mojokerto. Bu Hikmah, please greet the speakers and please address to whom is your question. Thank you. Ibu Hikmah, please. Mbak Indah, please help Ibu Hikmah to unmute herself. Mbak Indah, please. Halo Mbak Indah. Ibu Hikmah?
Yeah, Miss Dia.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Miss
Welcome Ibu Hikmah, yes.
Unmute and turn on your camera. Miss
Ibu Hikmah, are you there?
Are you there?
Okay. I think Ibu Hikmah is not there because she still raised hand, but there is no voice. Or have you already unmute her unmute sign, Mbak? Okay. If there is no question, yes.
We cannot unmute her because Hikmah should unmute the microphone by herself.
Okay, Mbak Indah. Okay, so let's move to another question. This is from another question is from Yahya Krishna Wansa. We will have another 2 questions and then we will close this session. I will read all the questions. But Yahya, you want me to address your question or you will address yourself? No answer. Okay. Assalamualaikum. Hello, sir, ma'am. My name is Yahya Krishna Wansha. I'm from Stisip Imam Bonjol, Padang. I'm interested in accusations of conspiracy of COVID-19. Many people believe that. How in your country about it? Maybe in Kazakhstan or Malaysia. Thanks. So maybe the question will be addressed to Dr. Ricardo and also Puan Halimah. Dr. Ricardo, please. This is about the conspiration of COVID-19.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the specifics of this new round of conspiracy theories, but whenever people don't understand something that for them has some mysterious aspects, they reach very quickly the conclusion that there must be some kind of a conspiracy. And I think that this current crisis is not exceptional. So I think that all of you who spend time on the internet can find the most incredible explanations on the internet, very conspiratory and so on and so on, which is to some extent very amusing, to some extent is very alarming. And I think the key problem here is that, my impression is that large portions of the public have really little appreciation of the kind of work that scholars and practitioners are doing. And instead of actually getting the right information, and trying to have for lack of a better word, a scholarly understanding or thinking along the line of scientific rationality, they're much more appealed by whatever conspiratorial argument they can come across, and that's very unfortunate. I think that possibly the best solution would be at this stage for governments, to communicate better, but even that is not always easy because, as we have seen in the course of these pandemics, as time went by, government learned more, and they were able to come up with new or better responses. And so, that at time implied or switching from a narrative that was used at the beginning of the crisis to some other kind of arguments. And so, these kind of discrepancies that are they can totally be explained in very rational terms, capture the fantasy of the public that makes that uses them to make conspiratorial claims. But so I think that's unfortunately a problem that happens in many other areas.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ricardo. Professor Omar, do you have a different opinion, or you may add some information?
Well, I mean, I agree with my colleague, Dr. Pelizzo. I just want to add, like, these conspiracy theories are like air mattresses. They are everywhere. They make us feel very comfortable, but there is nothing in them. So we cannot avoid them. And the best way to avoid them from public policy perspective is to communicate in much more faster, much more reliable way, so that we can eliminate the power of those conspiracy theories. That's, thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Dr. Omar. Maybe because we also have a different opinion on this conspiracy, it's very hard to prove the conspiration, I think. Okay, Puan Halimah, what about your opinion?
Okay, I'm also not sure how I'm going to say about conspiracy and what means by Mr. Yahya, I think, who asked the questions. But maybe I'm not sure either I am answer you properly or not, but I would like to relate with what happened in Malaysia. Just the new cabinet was formed just when pandemic exists, somewhere on March 2020. So actually lots of conspiracy come from the other oppositions or from the previous party who lost during the election. I think, but for as a layman or as for citizen, conspiracy is a kind of game for the politician. But as a citizen, we want to see what kind of the action or what kind of the initiative given by the government, either of course by government of the day in terms of helping particularly poor groups in continue or sustain in their life, rather than talking much about conspiracy. Of course, if we look at from the political lens, conspiracy is there, particularly in the context of Malaysia, where new government leads, new cabinet leads our government, then lots of conspiracy in terms of how new government able to form their team to facing this kind of the challenges. So I would say that yes, conspiracy is exists, but as a citizen, we want to see actually kind of the initiative by the government to make sure our people can live well-being of their life, and they are able to continue their life in emotionally, peacefully, and have the food security and so on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Puan Halimah. I think we will go to our last question. This is our last question, so maybe later Puan Halimah can respond first. From Ilyas Yusuf. Mas Ilyas, are you there? Mas Ilyas? Okay, he is not here. Good afternoon, my name is Ilyas, and I would like to ask a question regarding the opinions of all speakers. Based on the data from the Central Statistic Agency in Indonesia, it was noted that Indonesian economy in the third quarter of 2020 was minus 3.49%. That means Indonesia is in recession. In addition, the International Monetary Fund or IMF projects that world economic growth will contract or grow negatively by 4.9% in 2020. What should the government do in solving the problem of recession without disturbing the government strategy in stopping the spread of the COVID-19 virus? Thank you. This is about Indonesia, but maybe other countries also experience the recession. Any response from all of the speakers? Wan Halimah, please.
I think as we have the economic expert here, maybe we will open to the him that really expert to this matter. Maybe Prof. Omar can talk first.
Okay, let me put my economist hat, and I don't have specific specialization and information about Indonesian economy, but the recession due to the pandemic lockdowns and pandemics since the beginning of the year is prevalent in almost entire globe. One of the one good news is like the recent announcement of 3 vaccines. Probably you have noticed like how the stock prices of major airlines have shot up, and how stock prices of online streaming services like Zoom went down. Those are in a way good news that especially for the bulk of economy, for the majority of the economy who wants to go back to the normal as we had before the COVID-19. Now, overall, the best estimation is among major economists is like we expect to be back to pre-COVID levels by the end of 2021. And in that, until then, I believe the sectors that have suffered a lot, like tourism, hospitality, hotels, rent-a-cars, and flights, will recover faster as a response to a lower base and as a response to people's expected or delayed consumption of those goods. So as soon as the vaccine starts working globally, it will also have local effects as well. Other than that, lockdowns will keep restricting any kind of economic recovery, because that lockdowns or strict measures restrict the working of the labor market, the working of the goods market and services market. Especially, people cannot go out and shop, people cannot apply for jobs, you cannot have real-time interviews or job training, etc. So we will suffer that a little bit longer, I guess, but let's hope that the vaccines will start working immediately. I mean, there is also, to the best of my knowledge, we don't need the entire world population to be vaccinated. I guess around 20 to 40% is sufficient to go back to normal. But if I'm mistaken, you can correct me on that. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Oman. And Dr. Ricardo, do you have any information? Any response to this question?
Ricardo, we cannot hear you.
Dr. Ricardo? Oh, I cannot unmute.
Yeah. I can do it. Well, I think that the key problem is that when the crisis started, everybody thought it was a crisis, but it was going to end soon. I don't think anybody had any sense that this crisis will last so long and have this kind of widespread effects. I think that that has caught pretty much everybody by surprise. And that's, I think, in fairness. And I think for many governments, they were asked to make very difficult choices, because on the one hand, their commitment to secure or protect the safety and the life of the citizens, but at the same time, we cannot destroy the economy. And so it was very difficult to find a balance, and different countries with different values have taken slightly different options. So, some countries preferred to play safe and try to do whatever they could to contain the spread of the disease, even if that amounted to greater economic losses, and other countries instead took a different route. So, Sweden was mentioned before as one of those that took a different route. So that's the general premise. What has been the resolution so far? Well, I think, governments have tried to come up with some kind of ways to support those individuals, those groups, those businesses that have been most negatively affected by the crisis, by the lockdown, and by the economic losses, which is, just a way to make sure that these groups, these individuals can find a way to sustain themselves until the day, as Professor Barish mentioned, a vaccine can be rolled out, and that's when we can really start to expect some kind of a meaningful economic recovery. But, again, until even when we have a new vaccine, I don't think we can go back to normal. Actually, going back to normal may be time consuming. I don't have data on Indonesia, but I was, for whatever other purpose, I was looking at the data on Nigeria. Nigeria, oil producing country, I think it is the highest population, is the most populated country in Africa, oil rich, resource rich, and so forth and so on. In many ways, it's similar to Indonesia. And for 2020, the International Monetary Fund projects that the Nigerian economy will shrink by 4.3%. And always the International Monetary Fund projects that in 2021, the gross domestic product of Nigeria will increase by 1.7%. But also the International Monetary Fund estimates that Nigeria will go back to the 2019 level of GDP only in 2023 or 2024. So as soon as the vaccine is rolled out, Professor Barish is absolutely correct. There's going to be, a going back to more normal, but to go back for many countries to go back to where they were before the beginning of the crisis, it might take longer than just a year. So, unfortunately, the economic implications of this devastating crisis will be long-lived. And I think this crisis will change the way we live, the way we work, and the way we do things in ways that I don't think will go back to what they were before anytime soon. That's my guess. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ricardo. And we understand that crisis has already happened in many countries also, and it is because of COVID pandemic. So we will listen to the last answer from Dr. Srirat, please.
Okay. The same. I have no data about Indonesia, but what I can do is to share about the experiences of Thailand. Yes, for Thailand, as you know already that we have at least 4 laws in order to import economic growth. In the time of crisis, yes, we are public sector, especially the Thai government. We cannot do cut back minute. We must do something that we call government spending. We can explain by this nice formula. For Thailand, according to this 4 law, what we have done until now, we try to increase consumption of people. We try to help SME and private firm for their additional investment in order to help the right one, import and export of the country. Every country around the globe nowadays, we use the future money in order to increase economic growth. It looks like a bet, but we have no choice in every country because in the time of crisis, government is the last one. That way we can explain by using I have to John. I have to say I cannot believe Kent, right? Kent school, Kent economic school and economic school, right? That we put push money into the economic system. That is the Thailand experience. We have a lot of measure, lots of promotion in order to stimulate people to pay more. And you know, in Thailand nowadays, many Thai people believe it because nowadays we are in the long holiday of Thailand, 4 days for vacation, and many people spend lots of money. That is very interesting. That we try to fix COVID-19 with the balance between about the pandemic control and the economy, because if we focus on pandemic too much, our economy collapse and the society and government cannot stay too. So that is why Thailand has to balance economy and the pandemic. That is all of my contribution for this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Srirat. I think we already have 4 speakers that have give a new insight on how is the relation between COVID-19 and governance. So in the term of topics, we already have a new insight from Professor Omar Baris and also Dr. Ricardo, how is the good governance matters on the transparency of the data, why maybe people will ask why the higher score in WGI also saw the trends of the high increasing number of COVID-19, but it's already answered in the presentation, but maybe because this is the good or high transparency of the governance. And second, we have Dr. Srirat, who have explained to all of us about how the state-based public administration trying to deal with COVID-19. And thank you also to Dr. Halimah Abdul Manaf, who have give her experience on how the principle of good governance. There are 6 principles who are implemented in Malaysia, and we can see now that Malaysian is in a better condition in the new normal, and they already have a good performance in trying to handle the COVID-19 pandemic. And from Indonesian side, we already have 4 students who have addressed the question. One is on the how is the WHO also the role of the WHO, and second is on the COVID-19, the afraidness of the citizens being tested. It's also the problem for the government, and also how the recession affected by the COVID-19 and how to get out of the trap of the recession. Thank you to all speakers who already give us the very brilliant ideas, and maybe we will follow with other new research on how actually the governance can handle the COVID. And also to all audience, thank you for finding time for joining us, listening to all the speakers who are already very excellent in describing their data, their findings, and also thank you for listening to us also, to all participants. And last but not least, later after I close this session, the MC will announce there will be 4 door prize to the participants who already contributing their ideas in sharing the question or in sharing what their experience regarding the COVID-19 in Indonesia. Okay, thank you very much, and congratulations to Kapsipi, who already now being 6 years in their establishment. Thank you also to Unjani, to the rector and also to the dean of Visipol, and Mr. Yamardi, who already arranged all this organization of the webinar. And thank you to all the committee who make this webinar very productive. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Now, before
See
we
you
at
next
the end of the ceremony, let me announce the door prize in this event is won by the friends, the guys who already asked the question. There is Ms. Eloy Sinalerian from UMY, Mr. Regita Ardia from Unisma, Mr. Yana Fajar, Mr. Yahya Kurniawan, and Ms. Ilyas Yusuf. Like I already chat you privately, you can contact the number by Ms. Dewi. Thank you very much. And now, I want to say hi to all the speakers. Can you say hi to me, please?
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I will say, Khop kun nak mak maka to from Thailand. Khop kun na mak.
Yes, ขอบคุณครับ
ขอบคุณครับ and then I will say Ilken Rahmat to Professor. Can you respond to me, Professor Ricardo? Is it right to say Ilken Rahmat?
Yes.
Ilken
Yes.
Rahmat. And I just want to say thank you very much to all the participants to join this event. Can you give me the applause for all of us today? Sorry if there's any mistaken or any techniques in this event. I will say have a nice day to you all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you bye bye สวัสดีครับ
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Prof. Omar. Thank you, Dr. Sirat, Dr. Ricardo, and also Puan Halimah.
Thank you for
Thank you
the
very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very
I
much.
see you
Bye.